Yes. Okay. So, before we get started, I do want to let you know. So I read through the chapter. Um, it covers the same basic information that I have for you, but mine is not in the same order. So it doesn't follow along with your text. The information's all there, but mine is in a slightly different order. This is how I've been doing it for years, and I like my way. So I'm going to keep doing it my way. However, the textbook does have all this information in it. If you've read through it, you know it's all there. You'll see it's all there. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Hold on. Where are we at? Share my screen. We're going to do this. Share. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see my fancy Renaissance painting? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. So we are starting at chapter 2, which your book focuses mainly on European exploration. In chapter 2, it starts by talking about mainly talking a lot about Portugal and the Portuguese, because they're kind of the first and they're the best at it for a while. So, I have, I don't know, I don't usually spend a lot of time on Portugal, but your textbook seemed to think it was incredibly important. So we'll cover it a little, but I like to start at the Renaissance when I start talking about European exploration. So we'll start there. From about the 12th to the 5th centuries, Europeans were focused on the Mediterranean trade routes, focused mainly on getting goods from the East, funneling in luxury kind of type goods. We're talking gold, spices, carpet, silk, ivory, tapestries, those sort of fancy things. Funneling them, I don't even know if I just said that right again, into Europe from Africa, India, Persia, what your book calls Asia Minor, those areas right there. Why change? Why look for a different route if that seemed to be working for everybody? Why do we have to find something else to do? Anyone?
Monopolies.
There were monopolies. Actually, we had quite a few. We don't have sort of the East India Company situation happening yet, but we're getting there. It's almost there. Yes. There's something else that happens in roughly the 14th century. It changes everything. Any guesses?
Are you talking about the bubonic plague or the Crusades?
The bubonic plague. Yes. I was talking about the plague. The Black Death happens about so I have 1345 to 1355, roughly, are the dates that I have for the Black Death. And in those 10 years, roughly half of Europe's population is killed, is decimated. Europe is decimated by the Black Death. By about 1400, they're starting to recover. Some cities become major trade locations. We're starting to recover. But essentially, what the Black Death does is, this is going to sound bad, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful. I don't, but it allows the survivors to prosper, because now you have a lot less people competing for the same amount of stuff, essentially, is what is happening here. The survivors now can inherit land, they inherit money, businesses, and there's more food available. Same amount of food, a lot less people. So, yeah, so it's good for those survivors. Not good for the everybody else, but yeah, you know what I mean. Okay. So why explore? Why go out and explore other areas? What's the point? What's the point of any exploration of going out and finding new stuff? What's the point? Why do it? Why not just stay home?
Money.
Money. That is exactly right. Money, you get honor, you get glory, you get fame. Plus, if you're a country, you get new lands, you can tax those people, you can use them as you need to, that sort of situation. Yeah, all those reasons keep a country stable. Through diversion, you can send troublesome noblemen on a trip if you need to. Hey, I really feel like you should go explore, I don't know, Canada. Go for it. Stay there for a while, see what it's like, and then come back and talk to me about it later. You know what I mean? That happens too. The other thing that really spurs on exploration is the Renaissance. We have, does anybody know what Renaissance means? I know you've learned this in some history class at some point, right? Renaissance. Oh, somebody's coming in. Anybody know?
The term, I had it, and then I
Yeah.
just lost it.
It's okay. So Renaissance, yes, it means rebirth. Yes. So it technically is it's the fancy French term for rebirth. So basically what we're doing here in Europe in roughly the 15th-ish century is we have a renewed interest in Greek and Roman civilization. We're going back to what worked in the old days to try to see if it could work again in the new days, basically. We have a new evaluation, new interpretation of things, including religion. That becomes a big part of it. We have new countries forming new governments. We're looking to see what works best for these countries. Yeah, anyway, a rebirth. Mainly, we know rebirth because of this explosion of culture that comes from Europe during the Renaissance. Here's an example of a Renaissance painting. Here's probably the most famous of a Renaissance painting example.
Is that a ferret?
One on the left here, Mona Lisa, right? Y'all notice she doesn't have eyebrows? You ever notice? She doesn't have eyebrows. I don't know. Then you have the lady on the left here. This is Lady with Ermine. I think an ermine's kind of like a ferret. I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe a mink?
Yeah, maybe that's probably a better comparison. You're probably right. I don't know. It just looks like a fat rat thing to me. I don't.
I mean, have you seen the way they, painted dogs back then? I wouldn't be surprised what it is. I could be
Yeah,
a cat.
that's true. It could be some real ugly kind of cat. You know those like hairless cats. You
I'm
know.
assuming it's a mink.
Yeah, you're probably right. Something like that. So that's another famous painting. But if you notice, these paintings are only about 20 years apart. But Mona Lisa has no eyebrows, and Lady with Ermine has one big long one drawn across her forehead. I don't know. Fashion changes so fast, y'all. So fast.
I don't know if that's an eyebrow. I think that's just part of maybe her headband.
So this one up here is her headband, and this here, they draw this in. That was painted on this one right here.
I still think it's part of whatever is over her head.
Like her veil kind of thing?
Yeah, I think both of it's part of
Scarf thingy?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. Fashion changes. Who knows? Okay, and then more Renaissance artwork. This is the Birth of Venus at the bottom there. More architecture. You have this really fancy architecture. This is a building in Rome. Anyway, so we have all of this new emerging culture coming out of Europe during the 15th century, during the Renaissance. The other thing, huge thing that happens is the invention of the printing press. The printing press is invented in 1450. by Johannes Gutenberg in Germany. What makes the printing press so hugely important?
Um, Books are more like widely available, so a lot more
Yes,
people can read, and like newspapers and all that. So more, it's like social media, just everything travels quicker.
that's exactly right. Books are more available. They're now able to be printed more cheaply, more effectively, more efficiently. They can be disseminated more widely, which means more people have access to more information. And I know this sounds cliche, but knowledge is power. The more information you have, maybe the more questions you have, maybe the more you want to find out. This is sort of what happens after the invention of the printing press. This is what happens. The very first thing that gets printed is the Bible, obviously. Churches had Bibles, and a priest maybe could read it to you, but there wasn't, the population of Europe at this time wasn't incredibly literate. But now with the printing press, that's starting to change. You have more literacy happening in Europe, and more books available for more people. Okay. The biggest, oh wait, I have another thing of the printing press. There you go. The biggest country, the country who kind of starts out the exploration, really kind of starts in Portugal. There's a few reasons, two big reasons why Portugal is so big on exploration. One, Henry the Navigator. He's the son of the king, of the Portuguese king. He collects all kinds of information about sailing, geography, etc., and he wants to know what's out there. Excuse me. The other thing is, Portugal does something incredibly well that nobody else does yet. They do one really big thing. Does anybody know what that is? They make something. I can't see the chat. I'm so sorry. I don't have the chat pulled up. I see things flashing up there, but I'm not looking at the chat. I'm sorry. So maybe you've answered this already. But ships, they build ships. They're really good at making ships, at building ships. They invent a new kind of ship called the caravel. It's very sturdy, it's very fast, and it can hold a lot of cargo, which is huge when you are making a voyage and you have sailors that need food and water for a longer period of time. You can take that with you. That becomes huge. And the Portuguese are very good shipbuilders for quite a long time, which gives them a huge advantage when it comes to exploring. They reached the African coast, they go all the way to the African coast, and start setting up trading posts in the 1400s. They realize pretty quickly that it's better to establish a friendly trade relationship with these African kingdoms. So they start setting up these trading systems using slaves to develop their sugar plantations along the Cape Verde Islands, which is important because that is the system that they bring to the New World with them when they come to the New World, that African slave system. So the other thing, Portugal is trying to find a quick route to Asia, going around to try to circumvent the Mediterranean trade. In 1488, Bartholomew Dias sails all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, all the way around Africa, the bottom, and back to Lisbon. And when he gets back to Lisbon, he says, I totally could have gone farther. I could have made it all the way to India. So Vasco da Gama does. In 1498, he sails all the way to India. It leads the Portuguese to start an empire, essentially, of trading. They have amazing ships. They can go far and fast. They already have these trade routes established and these trade systems set up with these African kingdoms. It sets them up in a really good position for a pretty long time. They do very well for themselves. This sort of becomes the basis for Columbus's attempt to reach China even quicker because he thinks he can get to India and China faster. Instead of going east, he could go west. That's his idea here. All right. Okay, let's talk about Columbus. I don't like talking about Columbus, but we have to talk about Columbus. Okay. You know what? I don't mean to disparage Columbus. I'm just giving you the information here. You make up your own mind about Columbus. Sorry. Okay. Christopher Columbus. He was born in Genoa, Italy, 1451. He taught himself geography, navigation, Latin, all the things that you need to be a good sailor. In 1480, he wants to travel, he wants to explore. And also one of his main ideas here is to spread Christianity. He wants to spread the good word. He wants to find riches in India. He wants a new route to India by traveling west across the Atlantic Ocean. That's his big idea here. He finally persuades Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain to pay for his trip. In exchange, he works out a deal for them. Whatever he finds, he gets to keep a 10th, but they get 90% of whatever he finds in the hopefully in the Indies or China, hopefully, when he gets there. That's his plan. So August the 3rd of 1492, everybody know, Columbus sailed the ocean blue with 90 men from 8 different countries. They leave Spain on their 3 ships. Anybody remember their 3 ships? I think you have to know this, right? Come on, you have to learn this in elementary school.
Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Yes, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. 2 of those 3 ships are caravels built in Portugal. So hopefully they're going to get him to the New World. So he goes to Lisbon first to get supplies. They leave from Lisbon. They sail until October. So almost a whole month without seeing any kind of land. There's nothing out there in the middle there without seeing any land. His men start getting anxious, very worried that they're never going to find land. They're getting very nervous about it. They start talking mutiny. He promises they will find land within 3 days. Give me 3 more days. Don't mutiny. Just give me 3 more days. I promise you we'll find land. And lucky for Columbus, they did. October the 12th, they spotted land. They first land in the Bahamas. He names it San Salvador, but that's the first place they land is in the Bahamas. He thought he was near India. He really did think that he was near India. So he calls the people Indios. Actually, they are the Taino people and the Arawak Native American tribes. But he renames them because he thinks he's in India. So which is why we call them Indians still to this day, which is awful. I don't know. They leave San Salvador. Next, they land on Cuba. They get to Cuba. He realizes pretty quickly Cuba is beautiful, but there is no gold in Cuba. So sail on. Finally lands in Haiti, which he calls Hispaniola. When he lands there, he realizes the people who come out to, greet them are wearing gold jewelry. So he thinks, bingo, this must be the place. They're also smoking tobacco, which he had not had before. So that's kind of a new thing for him as well. I think it is in the article maybe that you read about Columbus or should have read. Maybe I should have. About Columbus, where it talks about his first impressions of the Native Americans. What did it say? What do you recall his first impressions of the Taino peoples? It's got a pretty good description of them in there.
I don't exactly remember how he described them, but I do remember him saying that they were very eager to come out and meet him, and that they were a little like they had never seen like armed weapons or whatever, so they like grabbed the blades and they cut
Yes.
themselves, and he was
Yes.
like, ah ha ha.
You silly children. Yes, exactly. Yeah, he describes them as being a beautiful and kind people, that they're well made. They don't have any clothes on, but they're beautiful people and well made. He also is quick to point out that they would make very good slaves. In the second or third paragraph of his letter home to the king and queen, he tells them, with about 50 men, I could easily subdue this whole group of people. That maybe 50 guys, I could turn all of these people into slaves. They're really nice and easily subdued. So I could do that, no problem. Yeah. So he's already got that in mind. He still thinks, after landing here, that he has maybe landed in the Japanese islands, the islands off the coast of Japan. He goes back to Spain with very little gold, hardly any gold. So he does the next best thing. In his mind, he takes the Native Americans with him home. He takes 12 of the Arawak Indians to give as a gift to the king and queen, to be servants to the king and queen. He leaves 40 of his men on Hispaniola to kind of keep everybody in check. I don't know. Yeah. Isabella and Ferdinand receive him back home. They're not thrilled with the idea of him bringing Native Americans back with him for the specifics of them being slaves. They do sponsor another trip for him to go back to what he considers India. But when they send him back, they give him strict instructions. Treat the Indians lovingly and do them no harm. That's what they tell him to do. However, he's there, they're there. It's not like they're really have a lot of power over him at that point, that many miles away. Okay. The other thing is the new printing press allows his stories to be printed and disseminated among the people of Europe, which gets people curious about, oh, okay, well, maybe he's found something else. Let's figure this out. See what else is out there. So like I said, they sponsor him again. He takes 4 trips from Europe back to Middle America there. He never actually makes it to the North American continent, up to what we consider the United States. He never actually makes it there, but gets close-ish, I guess. To make sure that they have a stake in this exploration. Spain wants to strengthen its ties to this new land that they've discovered here. So they sign a treaty with Portugal. It's called the Treaty of Tordesillas. They signed it in 1494 before Columbus's third trip. They signed this treaty with Portugal. They divide the Americas and Africa between Spain and Portugal. Spain gets whatever they find in the New World, with the exception of Brazil. Portugal's already there, and they've already established a trading base in Brazil, which is why Brazil speaks Portuguese. Nobody else in South America does, but that's why. Portugal, on the other hand, gets their trading posts in Africa, and Spain says, fine, you have that. We'll take this. We'll keep it copacetic between us, basically. It's basically meant that Spain is controlling colonies in the New World, and Portugal is providing the ships and the slaves. That's basically what this treaty has set up now. On his second trip, the first trip he's got 90 guys, remember? The second trip he comes back with 17 ships and 1,400 men. So quite an increase in the second trip. When he gets to Hispaniola, he finds that his men have essentially gone crazy. They have lost their minds. They have robbed all the villages. They have, oh, sorry, my kid's in the next room, Harlan. Raped all the women. Thousands excuses for which they were hated by the Indians. That's a direct quote from Columbus's son about what was happening in Hispaniola. The other thing is, from their first trip, the sailors brought with them disease. They brought germs with them from the old world to the new world, specifically things like smallpox, measles, typhus, and a series of STDs that they have now passed around. Yeah, so they are essentially wiping out the Taino peoples. On his his fourth trip. So wait, I wrote it down. On his fourth trip, when he comes back, there are more than half of the Taino people have died, and by his last trip, 90% of them are gone. The entire population of the Taino peoples have died out within 2 generations after Columbus shows up because of the enslavement and mainly because of the disease that the Europeans have brought with them. It's incredibly sad. It's really sad. So did anybody actually read this story? This article about Columbus? Don't read it? Yes. So let me ask you this. Do you think that he knew what he was doing, or do you think that he was blissfully ignorant about the situation? Do you think he just got really lucky and landed there and this is just what he had to do to, make his journeys possible or make it worth it for the people in Europe, for the king and queen and himself, his passengers? Or I don't know. What do you think? What do you think?
Based on what I was getting from the article, he seemed really bad at all of his math. And so I think he was lucky in the regards that he actually got there. But with everything he ended up doing with like the slaves and the manipulation, it seemed, I think he knew what he was doing with that. So it really depends on what he was doing.
Right.
So both?
That's a good, yeah, that's kind of what I think too. Maybe just a lot of both. Maybe he got incredibly lucky. I mean, in the article, it says he kept 2 sets of logs for his ships, one for himself that he thought was accurate and clear and correct, and then another one that he kept for his sailors to try to show them, like look, this is what we're doing. And when historians found them later, they realized the fake one that he was making for his sailors was actually more accurate than the one that he kept for himself because his math was so far off. He thought that he could get from the Canary Islands to Japan. He thought that roughly equaled about 2,700 miles. When in actuality, from the Canary Islands to Japan, it's 13,000 miles. So his math is not just like a little off. He was way off on a lot of his calculations. I don't know. Yeah. So, here it is. By 1496, a third of the Taino peoples had died. In less than 2 generations, all of them on Hispaniola were gone. So, I don't know. That's a lot. I don't know. You can make up your own decision about what you think about Columbus. In one of my very first history classes I ever took, it was I think I took modern American history. And my teacher basically said to us on the first day of class, I'm not going to tell you just the good stuff. You have to know the bad stuff too, because it's part of your history. You have to know the bad stuff along with the good stuff, because nobody's perfect. Nobody's good all the time. These people are human. They're human beings and they make mistakes. So some more cruel than others. But, you know, you got to learn the good and the bad. But whatever. I think that's just part of it. He never acknowledges, Columbus never acknowledges the fact that he had found a new continent for Europe. Instead, he insisted until the day he died that it was the gateway to China, that he had found the gateway to China, that those islands were, the gateway to China. So when it comes time to name the Americas, there's a German map maker, and he's trying to decide what to call these places. And originally they thought we should let them be called, you know, something after Columbus, because he sort of discovered them. So, but he said, no, I didn't discover anything new. This is China. I didn't discover anything new. So instead, they named them after Amerigo Vespucci, who was another Italian explorer. So that's why we have the Americas now. Maybe if he hadn't been so stubborn or so proud, we would be living in North Columbia or something. I don't know. Who knows? Whatever. I'm just saying. Okay. So while we were talking about the Renaissance, and the age of exploration, let's do that first. The age of exploration is what this time period is called. When Europe is sending all these ships out exploring new places, it's called the age of exploration. So it's brought about by a few key factors here. One, new technology, right? Intellectual changes, scientific discoveries, et cetera, et cetera. The printing press. We also have the invention of cannons, gunpowder, firearms, things like that are very helpful when trying to take over a land from another people's. Two, severe population decline caused by warfare, famine, and especially the Black Death. We have no people to work fields and do manual labor anymore. A lot of those people have died off. So we got to go find more people. That kind of eggs people on as well. Three, we have the rise in the middle class. Bankers, merchants, investors, they are all wanting to make money in this new type of merchant economy. They all want a part of this. Four, I have the Renaissance. Educated Europeans begin a renewed interest in Greek and Roman literature, art. They challenged the traditional idea of kings and the ruling class and authority. And also now the authority of the church is beginning to be questioned. That's a big deal, which we're about to talk about. And then lastly, shipbuilding. The Portuguese and their amazing shipbuilding skills. They get new techniques, new technology. So larger ships can now sail further with more people, more stuff. It's easier to travel now. So all of these things help spur on this age of exploration. Okay, let's talk Martin Luther for a minute. During the Renaissance, we have the Protestant Reformation. So we have to talk about this just a little bit because Martin Luther changes the game for the Catholic Church, basically. He is a German monk, a priest, a teacher. In 1517, he writes a letter to his archbishop with a list of 95 theses in which he condemns the selling of indulgences, lots of other things that he finds contradictory to the Bible. Do you guys know what the selling of indulgences is? Do you know what that means? What they were doing, the Catholic Church?
Was it because they were like, you could pay for your sins?
Yeah, basically, you could donate money to the church and they would forgive you. So you basically are buying your way to heaven. This is basically what's happening here. Martin Luther thought maybe that's not the best. Maybe that doesn't necessarily fit in with biblical teaching. Yeah. So he writes this list of 95 things that he thinks the Catholic Church should change, or maybe in some instances completely do away with. And he puts it on the front of the church door here. That's what this is in the bottom right. There is a famous, there's this famous story about him nailing the 95 Theses to the door of the church. It's not necessarily the deal. If you notice in this picture, there's lots of other things nailed to the front of this church door. The church was the communal meeting place, and the church door was essentially like the community bulletin board. So he put it on the door of the church so everybody could see it. It wasn't like an act of defiance or anything like that. It was just he wants everybody to be able to read this. Hey, check this out. Look what I did, basically. So he calls for some reforms. One, New Testament writings over canon law and papal decisions. So that kind of goes against, it goes against Catholic teaching. Two, and this was a big one for the Catholic Church, he wants to do away with priests altogether. Doesn't think Christians need a go-between between themselves and God. Catholic Church is not happy about that. He also wants the Bible translated into different languages so more people can have access to it and be able to read it. Yeah, it didn't go over well, just put it that way. The church labels him an outlaw. That's the official term, outlaw. And he was excommunicated and kicked out by the Holy Roman Church and the Holy Roman Empire. Totally kick him out. It leads to Lutheranism. Basically starts his own form of religion here. Leads to Lutheranism, where they follow the teachings of Martin Luther, the basic teachings of Martin Luther. Salvation is not earned through works, but you get it by faith and grace, believing in Jesus Christ and Jesus's sacrifice. It is a break from Catholicism all across Europe. It's a huge deal. Expedited even more. This Henry VIII breaks from the Catholic Church as well, and he forms his own church, the Church of England. He starts his own church, and he appoints himself the head of it. Handy. It combines elements of both Protestantism and Catholicism. It's kind of all, that's kind of mixed in there. But really the famous thing about Henry VIII here are his wives and all the wives that he went through, basically. So here's a handy saying. You ready? This is his wives. Ready? Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived.
Woo!
There you go. That's how you can kind of keep track of them. The first one, he was married to Catherine of Aragon for 24 years. Long time to be married to somebody. Divorced her. That's something new in the Church of England. That's allowed now. Handily in his new church, you can get divorced. So nice.
I hate that the only reason I know about any of this is because of the musical.
Same.
What musical? Which musical? What are you talking about?
Dude, it's called
musical?
Six. It's called Six. It's all of his wives are singing about being his wives.
It is amazing. It's a very good one.
Is this on
when you-
YouTube or something? Can I look this
Yeah,
up?
you can go find
Yeah.
them. They have a really good
Fantastic.
If you
album.
have it or on you. Yeah, you can find
I
it.
will totally check this out.
Yeah, because when he said divorced, beheaded, died, that is their opening song. That's
Is
what
it
they
really?
say. Yeah.
Yeah,
They say-
ex-wives.
Yeah,
It's
they're
really
the
good.
ex-wives.
I took a graduate class. We did like English and Scottish history. And the first day of class, that's what he came in saying that. And he was like, that's probably all you know about this. We're going to get into it. And I was like, I have no idea what any of this is about, but I'm in. This sounds fantastic. Yeah. So
Fascination with American history and Broadways and musicals right now is pretty high.
nice. Awesome. Yes. I used to use Hamilton in class a lot because it's so good. They told me I had to stop doing that. So, oh well, whatever. It's good though. I may not. I may do it anyway just because it's that good.
I won't snitch.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So the first one is he was married to Catherine America 24 years, divorced. And then Anne Boleyn, he had Jane Seymour, died after childbirth. She died. She had Edward VI. And then Anna Cleves, she lives. Catherine Howard, beheaded. Catherine Parr, he dies while they're still married. So she becomes his widower. So yeah, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Insane. Okay. Anyway, we have these new churches, new nation states, new leaders, and the whole thing is here, they need money. First and foremost, they need money. So a good way to do that is to find other places, tax them, or get the goods from those places, bring it back home to the mother country, yeah, get involved in some sort of exploration. It's a good way to get you some money. Okay, let's go here. Actually, I think, trying to decide if we talk about conquistadors. Okay, what time is it? What time do I have? Okay, your book does a really good job, a really thorough job of talking about the conquistadors, Hernan Cortez, there he is, and who's the other guy that goes to conquer the Inca? What is it? Who's it? Oh, I lost my train of thought. He overcomes Montezuma. Does anybody remember their name? I don't remember his name. Crud. Why can't I remember his name? Anywho, your textbook does a fantastic job of talking to you about the conquistadors and how Spain was able to basically gain control of South America. One of the key factors here is what's the big overriding factor here? The reason they're able to do so much in South America.
Do you mean like, what's the reason of being able to control South America so quickly?
Yes.
The people were just nice and they didn't know who they were. When the conquistadors first got there, they thought they were gods and let them inside their palace, and then they just killed the king and took his daughter and sent her to Spain.
Yeah, right? That's crazy. They're able to do all of that. Yeah, so when Cortez shows up, he has 300 men. In addition to that, he's got 16 horses, which they had never seen before, guns, and metal weapons. So he's got quite a huge advantage there over these Native American peoples. Yeah. He makes it all the way to, this is what I have. He makes it all the way to, I don't like saying these names. Okay, he makes it all the way to Tenochtitlan. By November of 1519, the emperor at the time, Montezuma, he didn't know how to react. He invites him into his palace. By now, there's 600 Spanish troops, hundreds of Indian supporters, because they picked up supporters along the way, saying, we're going to overtake the Aztecs. Come with us. Yeah, finally, he laid siege to the city. He kills Montezuma. 3 months of battle, no food or water. At the same time, smallpox are basically decimating the Native American population as well. So by August 21st, 1521, the Spanish stormed the city, loot the gold treasury, execute the new leader, and claim control of the entire Aztec Empire. Remember I told you these places are like for real empires. They had millions of people. And within less than 2 years, Cortez is able to come in and take over the whole shebang. Yeah, pretty handily, actually. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Let's talk about the Columbian Exchange real quick. Excuse me. The Columbian Exchange is huge. It transforms these two, I'm going to say 3. It transforms, well, I don't know, let's say 4 continents over the course of just a very short amount of time we're talking about here. So from, and this is just a really basic map here. This is not all the things that get swapped and transferred, just some basics. But Europeans are bringing with them into the Americas, into the New World, all these things. We've got cows for the first time, chickens, horses, pigs, which are huge to the North and South American countries. But then all kinds of other stuff. Coffee. Thank you. Thank you so much for the coffee. Yes. I can't imagine. But then the New World is giving things back. We give them beans, chocolate. I mean, that right there alone would have been worth it. Peanuts, pineapples, potatoes, pumpkins, squash, sweet potatoes, tobacco becomes a huge crop. Tomatoes and turkeys. So I kind of feel like the New World got the better end of the deal on this. However, I don't know, whatever. The other thing is, apart from just food and animals, really a huge part of this, the disease. They're trading diseases, mainly bringing them from Europe and Africa into the New World. They're bringing things like syphilis, tuberculosis, smallpox, measles, typhoid, all kinds of stuff that these Native American peoples have never encountered. So it is essentially all of these diseases are going through and decimating the Native American populations. Hugely, hugely destructive to the Native American populations. So, I mean, like I, said earlier, the Taino peoples are gone within 2 generations. The thing is, this leads to something else. So this leads to, so this leads to why does it matter that why does it matter? Of course it matters, but I'm saying it's important to American history because the people who are in the New World, these Europeans who have established themselves in the New World, they use the Native American population for a few things. But first and foremost, they've used them as slaves. Sugar plantations have become huge. What else? We've got hemp, we've got rice. What's another one? There's 3 or 4. Tobacco becomes huge, but we need workers for those plantations, and the Native Americans become those workers, basically, for the Europeans. The thing is, these Native Americans are dying off in drastic numbers. So what does that mean for the Europeans in North America, South America too? Now what?
I guess it would be they got to go find more workers.
That's exactly right. Are we going to give up plantations? Are we going to give up all that money? No, they're not going to do that. So where does that leave us? Where are we going to find a whole new group of people to work these plantations for us?
Africa.
Africa. That's exactly right. This is the beginning of the African slave trade as well. Right now, it's just the Columbian exchange where we're going from, basically North America to Europe, back to North America. We're just making this circular trip right here. Pretty soon, it's going to turn from a circular trip into a triangular trade where we go from North America to Europe to Africa, back to North America, because we have to pick up the African slaves and bring them into the New World. That starts roughly about the 1600s, the early 1600s. I think the earliest recorded African slave is 1619. So we're not far off from that. And that's mainly because the Native Americans have died off in such drastic numbers that we need some other workforce, basically, at this point. Okay. So ending on a side note. Oh yeah, Roanoke. Okay. I think. I mean, the rest of it. If you go through your chapter, there's a lot of detail. Hold on, let me stop sharing since I'm done with this. There's a lot of detail in there about the conquistadors, the encomienda systems, the Native American populations. They even talk a little bit about the Inca in Peru. It's very detailed. You're okay, darling. Go ahead. Sorry. He needs food, of course. Okay, but if you go through it and you have questions or you want to discuss it at all, I'm more than happy to do that. But that is where I'm going to stop it for today. So does anybody have any questions about what we did so far, what we've covered?
Yeah, quiz tonight.
Yes, there is a quiz over chapters 1 and 2 in the readings, and that's due by midnight, I think, is when it closes. Your discussion post by Friday afternoon, and then that closes on Sunday, Yeah, I guess that's it. If you think of anything, or if you have questions, you email me. No problem, just whenever. But if not, then I will see you Monday. Right? Oh, don't forget about the SI session this afternoon, just in case. Okay. If not, have a good weekend. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Good rest of your
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Thank you.